Really early on in this game, a character shows up wielding a weapon that's also a flute, and they use this weapon flute to summon a half-mechanical dragon called a Draco Machina. Does this sound familiar to any of you? All joking aside, Shining Resonance Refrain is nothing like Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, but when that happened right near the beginning of the game, I couldn't not think about the Green Ranger and his Dragon Zord. So what is Shining Resonance Refrain like? Well, quite happily for me, it's a lot like the more modern Tales series. The structure, the feel, and the way it plays just screams Tales of Exilia and Berseria, to name a few, but the presentation really isn't the same at all. Music is a large part of the narrative. I've already mentioned the weapons that double as instruments, and that concept is woven into the story and the gameplay all throughout. It has a hint of Eternal Sonata or Arno Surge, and it's a great little narrative, if not a little cliched or predictable at times. But the draw narrative-wise isn't really the overarching story, it's the characters that is where a huge focus is. And one thing I want to say before moving on is just how good the character designs are in this game. The anime-style graphics that were seen on many a PS3 JRPG back in the day really haven't hampered creativity and uniqueness. Even the male characters have a ton of variety and great designs, and I say even the male characters because a sizable feature of Shining Resonance Refrain is being able to date the female characters. There are a lot of character events in the game that play out kind of like skits in the Tales series. They can sometimes be funny, sometimes add to the lore of the game, but what they often do is show bonds growing between characters. Eventually these bonds can lead to dates, and there is plenty of incentive to take part in these sub-events, other than seeing a load of scenes with your Shining Resonance waifu, of course. Now, surprisingly for a game with such a sizable relationship system like this, and with character designs by Tony Taka, Shining Resonance is really light on the fan service. I was expecting it to be chock full of anime boobs, and while you can technically clad your party in swimsuits like I've done here, these were DLC costumes in the original PlayStation 3 release, and the default outfits are far more awesome looking than they are fan servicey revealing. Not to mention the dates that I've done so far have been very tame. That isn't to say it's bereft of fan service, but don't come into Shining Resonance expecting Senran Kagura. I've already mentioned it feels a lot like Tales, and that comes down to the gameplay. From the battle system, which is a solid action-based system revolving around combos, special attacks, and a break mechanic, among other things, to the field maps you'll use to travel from place to place. You'll find side quests in towns, NPCs might shout a voice line as you walk past, and there is a funny little creature that tries to help in battle. And did I mention this game feels a lot like Tales? This isn't a criticism though, I love Tales, it's my favourite series, and I feel like Shining Resonance Refrain has succeeded in quenching my thirst while I eagerly await for more Tales. I didn't realise how much I missed this kind of game until I sat down and started playing Shining Resonance Refrain. Are there flaws? Sure, just like all games, and you will notice that it has the feel of a late PlayStation 3 JRPG, because that's what it is. This is a remaster of exactly that, but that's nothing but a positive for me at this point. I really missed this structure. It's all wrapped up in a really great soundtrack with a good mix of purely musical and vocal tracks, with plenty of standouts, and I think the game looks great as well, all things considered. The biggest plus side to stylized graphics like this is how well they hold up years later. And just a quick note on performance before we wrap this up, I've played on both a PlayStation 4 Pro and Nintendo Switch, and they seem to do just about the same. There are obvious engine restrictions that cause some slowdown during really random parts of the game, and by random I mean slowdown usually only occurs when things aren't happening. Battle and exploration is fairly solid most of the time, but you'll sometimes get a bit of slowdown as an event or dialogue box begins. It really doesn't affect gameplay at all, and it certainly hasn't hampered my experience in any way. There are a few other systems in the game I haven't really talked about, but the game does a decent job of introducing mechanics and systems to you over time, and you shouldn't have any problem figuring it out. One thing that might confuse you though is the choice when you click New Game for the first time. You can check out the video in the top corner to see the differences between Original Mode and Refrain Mode. It explains it a little better than the game does. So should you buy Shining Resonance Refrain? Absolutely. I can't recommend this enough. It's exactly what I needed right now, and if you're a Tales fan, I wouldn't sleep on this. Thanks for liking, subscribing and sharing, and I'll see you all soon.